When we were thinking about adoption, I didn't know I would start crying after the third visit with Christian. I came home and I called Gabi and I told him I can't do this.
We met Christian the first time in a park near the CPS offices. He arrived there in a stroller and as soon as he was released from it, he started running around in circles and he barely took notice of any of us or anybody else there, and he looked like he might trip over and fall down with every step. As I was trying to keep up with him and catch him when he was about to hit the ground a few times, it quickly became clear from both his excitement and his lack of balance that it was not often that he had a chance to run around in the park, and that he was trying to make the best out of it before he had to return to being strapped again in a stroller. He was in fact so absorbed with his running around that he barely noticed us. I remember I held him a few times and tried to interact with him, get his attention as much as I could, and only once I got a 1 second long eye contact.
I remember the exact same things, and I too was pretty surprised that even though we were willing to play with him, he paid so little attention to us. We expected that he would react as a typical child, but as any other child, he had trust issues, and we were told that these kids do not always engage in playful interactions because of the fear of being rejected, so they maintain a distance in order to protect themselves of possible future disappointments. Most of these kids don't attach easily because they are used to being let down. I remember going home to Christian's foster mother's home, and I remember me and Gabi were pretty amazed by the fact that he was absent. He didn't really look at us, he didn't make eye contact, he was just playing in his own little world, even though we were trying to engage with him. And once we started playing with him, I remember the foster mother, and Gabi pointed out very well during the visit, the foster mother was so smothering, and she said, okay, don't go there, she kept telling him, don't play with that, don't get wet, don't run too fast, don't run too slow, stop right there, don't go there, don't go there. So the child couldn't do anything. He had ideas, he had an initiative, and we tried to play along with him and go along his ideas, but she would keep telling him, okay, stop, or probably she was afraid that he might get hurt. Anyhow, at some point, I remember me and Gabi were trying to push the ball from one another, and we formed a triangle, me, Gabi, and Christian, and he started pushing the ball towards Gabi and me, and we started playing with each other, and from that point on, he started making eye contact, just a short period of time, but he started looking at us little by little. And the thing that I remember pretty well was that during the first visits, he didn't really show any emotions. His face was pretty blank, and I was amazed that a child who was 2 years old, actually he was a year and 9 months, yeah, by then he was 1 year and 9 months. A child that age didn't seem happy, didn't seem sad, he was just blank, showing no emotions, and he was reluctant when he saw us, but that was pretty normal because he didn't really know us, we didn't have a relationship. But yeah, from being blank at the end of our meetings, he started looking at us a little bit more and making more eye contact. But we were a little bit afraid because no eye contact was a sign of autism, among others. I remember the next visit was in the park and also at our home, and this time around he let us hold his hand, he let us hold him in our arms, and we were a little bit more affectionate with him, and he was a little bit more responding, which was good. And after the fourth visit, I remember we were taking him home and he started crying all of a sudden, and I was a little bit worried because I didn't know what was going on, everything went well. And I asked the social worker, okay, what could it be that he cries? And she said that he might feel that he's good with us, or that he feels good with us, and that he doesn't want to lose us. And even though I was sorry for Christian that he was sad and crying, it was a good sign in a way, because that made us a little bit more confident that he knows who we are and that he might at some point be attached to us. After the first week, Gabi went back to Germany, and I remember that the social worker told me I could spend the day with Christian and Elsa as well. So I took both of them in the park, and I got a glimpse of what it meant to be in charge of the child that we were about to adopt. It was good and a little bit frightening, because I was responsible for a child that wasn't mine, with all the legal papers and so on. But I said, okay, I'm gonna do it, I will see how it is. And I went in the park, I was really happy, and I said, okay, I'm going to pay attention, I'm gonna look after the kids, I'm not gonna leave them out of my sight. And I just remember for 30 seconds, while the children were playing, I think I looked at my purse, and when I looked back to see where they are, Elsa was where I left her, and Christian was nowhere to be found. And I started panicking a little bit, actually a little bit more, because I started calling him, but he wouldn't answer. I started asking Elsa, did you see Christian? She said no. And I started running around trying to find him. And after a while, one of the mothers said, okay, look, Christian is right there. I saw him running. And it was really scary, because I knew I was responsible for him, and that gave me a glimpse of what it meant to take care of a child that needed a little bit more attention. And I remember that day I went home after taking the Christian home to his home. I went home to our apartment and I called Gabi, and I was pretty disappointed on myself, probably because it was so hard being in charge of two kids. And I told Gabi that I'm not sure I can do this, and it's too big of a responsibility, and I don't know if I can do this until the end.
I was trying to support Teddy as well as I could while being in Germany, but not being there, I probably was not able to grasp exactly what she was going through and get the extent of her emotions, because the last time we had spoken, everything seemed to have been okay.
Yeah.
We were overly excited by the fact that we have found such a sweet boy so soon, that we kind of closed our eyes and tried to rush the next steps as much as possible. You know, when you take a decision and you are aware that you don't know all the facts, but you just wish you are right, because you'd really like for that thing to happen. And we were asked by the CPS if we wanted to do some health investigations prior to us submitting the files in court, and we said we don't want to do it, even though that would have given us a more informed decision, because it was a combination for us of interpreting some facts our way and also some wishful thinking, I think. The fact that we were matched after only 2 weeks with what seemed to be a rather healthy 2-year-old boy was pretty much unheard of. Some might consider that even a miracle, and we kind of interpreted that as a sign from above, especially in our context of living away from each other for the adoption period and wanting to get back together as a family as soon as possible. So without losing any more precious time, we thought after a few visits we have put together the required papers and submitted them to court. And while waiting to get our court date, we then decided to do some health investigations because we had the time, and we had to wait anyways.
So after the first visits, the CPS worker advised us to take Christian to a specialist, to a psychologist, to see if he's well or doesn't have anything. And we said, no, it's fine with us, we're gonna adopt him anyway. But after a few meetings, I think we finally said, okay, it might be wise for us to take him to a psychologist, because actually before us there was a family who took Christian to a psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist recommended this autism test. So I went and found a really good psychologist, I thought, and she applied the standard autism test, and Christy actually scored a really low grade, and it was, at the end, his diagnosis was severe autism. I was pretty shocked because I didn't expect it at all, and I was pretty worried, and I asked the psychologist, what do you think? As a professional, we want to adopt this child, what do you think? Should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? And obviously she didn't give us a white or black answer, but she told me that without us he might be lost and that he won't be able to recover, and in a way that we could be his saviors. And in my mind it sounded a little bit strange because I couldn't adopt a child just because he would have died without us, but I couldn't leave him in this situation either. So I was 50-50%, I was torn, and I remember I was so disappointed and deflated. And another thing that the psychologist told us was that Christian in his state, if we would adopt him, he would destabilize our family in such a way that we won't be able to recover, and he would bring only trouble or problems since he won't be able to sustain himself later. And it was a lot of pressure on me and on ourselves as a couple. And I remember we talked about it after I came home, and we saw what we could do, but we didn't take any decisions the day that I found about his diagnosis. We wanted to think about it a little bit more and ponder all our options.
I was in Germany when Teddy went with Christian to do the autism test. After getting the discouraging results, we spoke for hours, trying to look at the situation from all viewpoints. What stuck most to my mind, and to both our minds I think, were the words of the psychologist. He will never be able to take care of himself as an adult. And this was triggering for me a déjà vu moment, like the one after visiting the first boy, when we realized that adopting him would have to be going over the boundaries we have agreed upon when we started the adoption process.
I remember the next week, me and Elsa went to the CPS to inform them about our final decision. And after a lot of consideration, me and Gabi thought, okay, we are not able to adopt a child with such needs, with special needs, since the psychologist told us about his diagnosis. So I remember going to the CPS, talking with them, telling them about what we thought during the weekend, and I felt such sadness in my heart because I felt like I was abandoning him like his biological mother did, and I started feeling unfit as a person. I started crying there, and I have to give them the albums, the photo albums that the foster mother gave me, and I really felt like I was letting him down, and also I felt unfit as a mother for my own daughter, but I couldn't go on with the decision of adopting him knowing about his diagnosis. So this is the point that we reached after a lot of conversation.
I also felt discouraged. It's like taking a turn in a marathon and thinking you see the finish line, so you start sprinting and then having to take a turn and realizing that you are still many kilometers away before the finish line. And a too early sprint and excitement can tax the competitor severely and might even throw him or her out of the race.
In our next episode, we want to talk a little bit about the people and organizations that supported us during this difficult time, and they helped us step by step through this whole situation, and they shone a light on our situation, and they guided us, I could say. And without their help, I don't think we would be here today. So we want to thank them again and hope that other people would be encouraged by them as well.
Thanks for watching, and see you soon.
We would be really happy to hear from you, so please leave us a comment in the comment section below, and see you next time!